Found out I'm dying, and I'm struggling to tell my wife that I don't want treatment because I fear becoming her burden. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and not that long ago, I went to the doctor about this persistent pain in my leg. Honestly, I thought maybe it was just wear and tear, maybe something with my knee or hip, just the usual stuff you worry about as you get older. Turns out I was way off. The doctor looked me in the eye and told me I have bone cancer, not just any kind, either, the type that kills you in 3 to 6 months without treatment. I sat there, barely able to process the words as he went on about my options. Chemo might buy me another year, but even he admitted the odds are slim. Then there's surgery, which could give me 5 extra years, but only if they take a massive chunk out of my hip bone. I'd barely be able to walk. It feels ridiculous. This kind of cancer is more common in kids or teenagers, but here I am, lucky me, right? Don't quote me on all the medical details, I only half remember what he said, the words washing over me in waves. The strange thing is, I'm really not that upset. Maybe the shock hasn't set in, or maybe it's something else. I've been carrying this news around for about 2 weeks now, not telling a soul, not even my wife. The truth is, I've never really found life enjoyable. I know how that sounds. I'm not suicidal or anything, but I've always had this feeling that if I ever found myself in a plane crash, my first reaction would be, well, that's finally over. Living is hard. It's exhausting, relentless, and honestly, I never wanted to live forever. But then there's my wife, she's 28 and struggles with her own set of mental health issues. I love her more than anything else in this world. For her, I've always been willing to stay, to keep moving forward, even when I didn't want to. She deals with depression and anxiety, struggles with suicidal thoughts, fights her battles every single day. She's incredibly strong, but the monsters she faces are bigger than most people can imagine. For the last 7 years, she's not only been the brightest part of my life, she's been the only anchor holding me steady. When the numbness faded after hearing my diagnosis, what I felt was relief. Not terror, not outrage, just relief, but now I feel trapped, because I don't know how to tell her. She's just clawed her way out of a dark depressive hole, and I'm terrified that the news could send her spiraling again. Worse, I know exactly what she's going to say. She'll insist that I fight, push for chemo or surgery, beg me not to give in. But I don't think fighting will change anything. If I go through with the surgery, the most I can hope for is 5 more years, 5 years where I'll probably lose my job, I do physical labor, 5 years where there's almost no chance of ever working again, and my health insurance would vanish. And if that happens, she won't be able to afford her medications, and her hard-earned stability will slip away. Even if there are some legal protections, I can't count on them to carry us through all the way. On top of it all, I can't stand the thought of becoming a burden to her. Loving me might make her want to care for me, but in reality, I know how heavy that would become. She already struggles to take care of herself some days, and the idea of her also having to care for me, crippled, dependent, fading day by day with a clock hanging over us, horrifies me. She would say she's willing to do it, but over time, I know resentment would set in. I couldn't bear to see her begin to resent me, to watch love twist into bitterness. That possibility is more frightening to me than dying, and if I chose chemo, I'd last maybe another miserable year, slowly withering away with all the same problems piling on top. So I keep going over this question in my mind, how do I tell her? I hate how selfish it sounds, wanting to just leave. But knowing that by not pursuing endless treatments, my life insurance would at least ensure she isn't left with a mountain of debt, it makes that option seem, if not good, at least bearable. I don't want to hurt her, but I can't stand the thought of being her anchor, dragging her under with me. So, how can I say all this? How can I make her understand my reasons, make it all make sense? I just don't know. Update 1. First, I want to say how much I appreciate all the advice, support, and genuine concern that's been shown to me and my wife through this whole wild stretch of days. It's been overwhelming in the best and worst ways imaginable. I can't stand loose ends, so I owe it to everyone, and myself, to give an update on everything that's gone down, clear up confusion about my situation, and let everyone know where I'm standing now. Let me clarify my intentions from the start. My plan was always to tell my wife everything. I just wanted to find the best way to do it, one that made it crystal clear that none of this was her fault, that this was a decision I personally needed to make, and that she would have the space to process it, speak her mind, and feel truly heard. Most importantly, I wanted to spare her as much as possible from a complete emotional collapse, especially these last few months together. Now, a little more context about my health. What I have is malignant osteosarcoma, high grade, stage locally advanced. This monster started in the right side of my pelvis and has now crossed into the left. It's invaded both sides of my sacrum but hasn't touched any major blood vessels or organs yet. For those unfamiliar, the sacrum is that flat, triangular bone that connects your spine to your pelvis. Because the tumor is malignant and growing, it's literally eating away at the foundation that lets me stand and sit upright. The worst is the pain. It radiates down my upper right leg, a burning, throbbing sensation that never really lets up, thanks to the tumor pressing on the nerves running from my spine, through my pelvis, and into my leg. A lot of people have wondered why I'm not pursuing surgery. Trust me, I've looked hard at every option. Here's the ugly truth. Surgery can't get all the cancer because it's already spread to both sides of the sacrum. If I went through with the operation, they'd have to take out most of my pelvis, including all the areas that connect my spine to my legs. I'd lose the ability to walk. The structure that lets me sit upright would be gone. The pelvis is what balances and supports you when you're sitting, and I simply wouldn't have that anymore. If I tried to sit, I'd just tilt and fall to the side. I'd need a specialized wheelchair to keep me upright and safe, and I'd require help just lying down, getting to the bathroom, even getting dressed. And for what? Maybe another 5 years, tops. Plus, this surgery isn't meant to cure me. It would just slow things down, take out most of the tumor, ease up some of the pain, and hopefully, stop complications like fractures or infections. There were suggestions about prosthetics, hip replacements, things that might anchor me back to some kind of normal. According to my doctors, there isn't enough pelvic bone left to even try those options. A hip replacement needs healthy bone to attach to, and I just don't have it anymore. For now, I'm focused on the only thing left, making the time I have left as comfortable as possible. I'm managing the pain with medication, looking into palliative radiation therapy, basically a targeted, low-dose chemo to shrink the tumor and give me a bit of relief, and considering nerve blocks to numb the pain entirely. My doctors tell me to use a cane to keep the pressure off my right side. That's where I'm at these days. Here's the big update, my wife. The day after I fully accepted my decision, I made us both a huge breakfast, her favorites, and tried to steel myself for what was coming. She knows me too well, she refused to touch a bite until I came clean. We ended up having an agonizing, soul-bearing conversation, both calling in sick for work. She cycled through everything: hurt, rage, sadness, grief, shock, pure misery, you name it. At one point, she became so nauseous that I was holding her hair back over the toilet in a surreal, heartbreaking twist on intimacy. I laid out my reasoning, every last bit. She was furious, and I can't blame her. She said what I expected, that she would take care of me, that I shouldn't leave her, that we could find new ways to live, no matter what. I handed her all my paperwork and together we went through every last detail, even the parts I hadn't wanted to look at too closely. Honestly, I'd been avoiding that pile because every option felt more dire than the last. I'd written out every suggestion, some crowdsourced, some from pure desperation, but nothing seemed to offer real hope. We had a couples counseling session scheduled for that afternoon. That's actually why I chose that day to tell her. We sent our therapist a heads up so they'd know what was coming. Our therapist helped us put our mindsets into words, helped us wade through the fraught emotions, and pointed us toward a grief specialist before we left, something we both realized we'd need, soon. But nothing shocked me as much as what happened later that night. Out of the blue, my wife told me she wanted me to get her pregnant. I immediately objected, because, seriously, what? But, well, when the love of your life starts taking her clothes off, my brain kind of hit the pause button on all my rational objections. This morning, I had my oncology appointment. I brought my wife with me. She'd done her research, had a whole arsenal of questions lined up for the doctor, some new, some I'd never even thought to ask. We spent an hour going over everything, laying all the cards on the table, hearing in detail what was happening to my hip and what options, if any, were still out there. The doctor was patient and thorough, even as my wife's frustration and anger boiled over at times. We left and had a total meltdown in the parking lot, her sobbing, me barely hanging on. That was one of the hardest moments, witnessing not just her grief, but her complete unraveling. It felt like the ground beneath us had vanished. Our plan for today is this: for now, my wife's going to rest, try to collect herself, and then we're telling our parents. She's incredibly close to her folks, and I'm not. I'm closer to my siblings, I'm the oldest of 6, so we decided to tell her parents first. That way, they can be there for her while I go and break the news to my own family, on my own terms. That's where we're at right now, no perfect endings, but as honest and as together as we can be. Update 2. We did the parents' gauntlet, and it felt like stepping into 2 different planets back to back. Her mom folded me into the kind of hug you only get from someone who spent a lifetime worrying about other people, then never let go of my wife's hand for the rest of the night. Her dad got very quiet and started looking me up and down like there had to be some seam he could pry open to fix me. He suggested names, hospitals, board certified this and Mayo that in a voice that was trying to be helpful and sounded like drowning. I told him I wasn't asking for permission. That hung there so hard the house changed temperature. He swallowed whatever argument he had loaded behind his teeth and sat down on the edge of the coffee table like he was keeping it from floating away. We drove across town afterward to my mother's place because if I went home first, I wasn't going to get back up again. My youngest sister found my cane by the door and made that loud, panicked silence teenagers make right before they cry. My brothers did what brothers do, stood shoulder to shoulder and took turns staring at the same spot on the wall. My mother grabbed my face in both hands and kissed my forehead like I was 5 and feverish. There were casseroles within 20 minutes, like someone pulled a lever hidden in the pantry. My dad isn't much for speeches, but he cleared his throat twice and asked me what I wanted, really wanted, and I told him I wanted our last stretch to feel like ours, not like I was escaping a burning building with a clipboard. The pregnancy thing didn't disappear. It wasn't a whim for her. It's an axis she set her feet on. I fought it again and then I didn't, because it turns out I don't get to choose which hope keeps her upright. We asked the oncologist, and he gave us the kind of honesty that doesn't offer soft landings. Pelvic radiation would likely wreck my fertility. If we were going to try, we needed to bank now. So we went to a clinic with watered ferns and magazines from last year, and I signed papers that used the word specimen too many times. The nurse said, "Take your time," and I nearly laughed in her face because time is the one thing I'm not rich in. I came back out with a paper bag and a metallic taste in my mouth from nerves I didn't know had taste buds. My wife just squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you," like I'd hauled a piano up 3 flights of stairs for her. At simulation for radiation, they put me on this narrow table under laser lines and asked me not to breathe like a normal human. They dotted my pelvis with ink and then tattooed 3 permanent pinpoints to line up the machine. "You won't even notice them," the tech said. "They look like a constellation only we know the name of." After we left, my wife marched me into a strip mall tattoo place, open sign flickering, and sat down next to me. She asked for 3 dots in the same spots she could reach. The artist looked at me and I shrugged. My wife didn't make a speech. She just held out her hand and let someone put a tiny map on it so I'd never be the only person in the room marked for this. First radiation treatment felt like being microwaved by a ghost. No fireworks, just a quiet hum and a spine that rang like crystal. I threw up in the parking lot afterward, which made the lady in the Prius next to us hiss "Oh honey" through her window and hand me a napkin with the local diner's logo on it. We went straight there. I stared at pancakes until they got cold and greasy around the edges and then ate them anyway. The pain was different for a while, not less, not more, just shifted, like the tumor had rolled over in its sleep. We met hospice on purpose. The nurse was our age and wore scrubs with tiny blue whales, which felt like a prank the universe pulled to see if I'd laugh or cry. She asked the practical questions no one else had the guts to. Where do you want to be when it happens? Who do I call first? What happens if you change your mind at 3 in the morning? She slid the DNR across the table and I held the pen over it long enough to watch my hand start to shake. Signing that form felt like standing on the top step of a diving board and deciding not to count again. After she left, we sat on the kitchen floor and ate popsicles out of the box because it was the only cold thing that made my mouth feel like my mouth again. My wife leaned her head on my shoulder and told me she wasn't scared of dying alone, she was scared of me thinking I had to do any of this alone. For once, I didn't have an answer. I just let her talk. Work was a knot I had to cut. I went in and told my foreman. He swore under his breath and then pulled out a chair like he was afraid I'd fall through the floor. HR said words like leave and benefits and cobra until they turned into dictionary soup. A guy I trained last year walked out to the parking lot with me and handed me his own better cane. "My granddad's," he said. He was mean as hell but the man didn't fall down. I promised to bring it back. We both knew that was a lie we could live with. The pain spiked last night in a way that made the room go sharp around the edges. The nerve block consult is next week, and now I'm counting sleeps like a kid with a field trip. I tried to make it to the bathroom on my own and my leg locked mid-step. My wife was there before I could decide whether to be proud or stupid. She steadied me without comments, which somehow hurt less than kindness usually does. She has started narrating everything we do together in this gentle half-joke voice. We are turning. We are sitting. We are surviving Wednesday, and it makes me laugh even when my body is telling me laughter is for people who aren't nailed to their bones. We bought a baby onesie from a thrift store on the way home from radiation. It was soft and yellow and cost $1.50. She put it in the top drawer of her dresser like it's a letter waiting to be mailed. Maybe it will go unworn forever and I'll read to it anyway. Maybe it won't. I didn't think I had any room left in me for maybes, and yet here we are, feeding one like a stray cat on the porch. We started recording voice notes at night. I talk until the meds pull the rug out. She asks me dumb questions on purpose so I'll answer like myself and not like a diagnosis. "What's the worst song you love?" she'll say, and I'll confess it's that old one about the car that runs forever. "If we have a girl and she hates pickles, will you still love her?" "Yes." "If we don't and it's just me, will you still love me?" "Yes." The phone fills up with our voices saying yes in different rooms, on different days, in the light and in the dark. I don't know if that's a happy ending, but it's an ending I can live in. For now, we've got our dots and our diner and our ridiculous little yellow onesie, and that's somehow enough to take another step. Update 3. The nerve block happened in a room so clean it felt like a blank page. They slid me onto a narrow table and drew a curtain around the part of the world that mattered. The interventional guy talked in a voice like a podcast I'd actually listened to. "You'll feel pressure," he said, and then he threaded something invisible through my back while my wife's hand burned a little moon into my palm. The monitor showed a skeletal map I recognized as mine even though I wanted to deny it. The medicine hit like someone turned down the volume on a bad radio station 3 clicks. Not silence, but finally a song I wasn't afraid of. We walked slower than we used to but faster than we had been. We used up that good hour like kids with quarters at an arcade. There's a planetarium downtown with chairs that recline more than is decent and air conditioning that's trying to prove a point. We sat and let a stranger's voice take us through constellations like he was calling roll. When he got to the part about the stars that are already dead and still above us, I cried and didn't even bother to pretend it was allergies. My wife pressed a contraband candy into my palm like it was communion and whispered, "We are surviving Thursday," into the dark, and I laughed because we were. At home, Hospice dropped off a bed that looks like a boat if you squint. We shoved the couch against the wall and pushed the bed right up to the window so the tree outside can keep me honest. The nurse with the whales on her scrubs came back and showed us how to raise the head without catching fingers, how to hit the button for the rescue dose without waiting to be brave. She put a little chart on the fridge with my name at the top like I'm a recipe for something we might mess up. When she left, my wife taped glow-in-the-dark stars to the ceiling in the same sloppy formation as the 3 tattoos on my hips. At night, when I can't sleep, I follow them like breadcrumbs to somewhere I would have liked to take her. We did a legal thing I didn't know how to shape. The clinic handed us a packet with my name and the word posthumous on it in the same sentence, and I sat in our car and coughed like I was trying to get it out of my throat. We took it to a shipping store that smells like boxes and printer ink. The notary had long glitter nails and a voice like she had seen a hurricane and stayed to hold the windows shut. She watched me sign the part where it says yes, you can use what I leave behind to make a person I will never meet, and then she stamped it like a priest blessing a boat. After, we split a grape soda on the curb, and I wrote a letter on diner napkins to someone who might one day exist. Hi, I wrote. You were a maybe that became a verb. I folded it and slid it into the dresser with the yellow onesie and tried not to cry on the cotton. Radiation kept doing its quiet work. I learned the names of new kinds of tired. There was a day my gut staged a protest nobody asked for, and we ended up on the bathroom floor counting tile squares like rosary beads while she rubbed tiny circles into my shin until the medicine caved in gracefully instead of like a fistfight. We are surviving Sunday, she said, and I believed her because the door was closed and the world was on the other side of it. My brothers showed up with lumber and a borrowed saw and built a ramp over our porch steps like they were trying to outstubborn the laws of physics. The whole house smelled like sawdust and sweat in that summer when we all thought we'd be invincible if we learned to skateboard. My dad measured everything twice and then again when he thought we weren't looking. He kept his tape clipped to his belt the way he used to keep his keys when we were small, and when he left, he slid his old carpenter's pencil behind my ear like a joke I didn't have to get. The new cane, the mean granddad's, leans by the door like a bouncer deciding whether to let us back in. We used one of the good hours to drive to the edge of town where the sky pretends it isn't on a leash. There was a field with those fast clouds that look like someone erased too hard. My wife found a kite at the thrift store with a dragon on it and string that bit her finger. She ran until the dragon was big enough to pull her hair out of its ponytail, and I sat on the hood of the car and felt the block holding while the wind threaded itself through the holes inside me. When the line hummed, she looked at me like we'd discovered electricity together. We let it crash on purpose because control is an illusion and sometimes it's fun to admit it. I fell in the hallway at 2 a.m. because my brain still thinks my body is a map we can trust. The sound I made scared me more than the pain did. I didn't hit anything important, just dignity, but my wife was there before I could decide which part of me to be mad at. She slid a pillow under my hip, said, "Stay," like I was a dog she loved, and then made the hallway into a runway with blankets so we could scoot instead of stand. We laughed halfway through it because I started narrating in her voice. We are scooting. We are ridiculous. We are getting there anyway. Work sent a man from payroll to my porch with a folder and a winter hat on even though it was mid-afternoon and warm enough to melt grief off a fence. He didn't sit down because the ramp was new and he didn't know the rules yet. He said there was a compassionate fund I didn't know existed, a bucket everyone had been quietly pouring into. I told him to tell them I was saying thank you without making eye contact or weird noises. He nodded like he understood and left me a stack of papers I set under the leg of the coffee table that always wobbled. We made peach cobbler at 2 a.m. because the kitchen felt like a church and the peaches didn't know what time it was. We burned it and set off the smoke alarm, and our neighbor came over with a fire extinguisher and a face like he'd been waiting his whole life to use it. He didn't get to spray anything. He ate a spoonful, swore, and said it tasted like summer in a cast iron pan. We sat on the stoop with bowls and too much cinnamon on our tongues and my wife kissed me with sugar on her lower lip and we pretended we were the only people who ever lived here. The thing I have to tell you is we peed on a stick. I wanted to say that softer but there isn't a soft way to say it. We weren't thinking science, we were thinking maybe. The line was so faint it looked like a rumor, a ghost thread, a scratch on old film. We set the test on the bathroom counter and both sat on the floor like it needed our height to decide anything. We didn't say the words. We just looked at each other and then at the counter and then took turns pretending not to look. She tucked it into a drawer next to the onesie like evidence or a dare and whispered, "We will wait until Monday," like Monday was a country you can drive to. There will be blood work and a doctor with a calm voice and numbers that either build a house or point at a field, and I am trying to be a place where both outcomes can land. We bought a cheap star projector online that makes our ceiling into a fake Milky Way when the hospice light is turned off. It's tacky and perfect. We lay there under our cartoon cosmos, and she asked me one of her questions. If it's nothing, will we still keep the onesie? Yes. If it's something, will you read the letter? I didn't say yes. I reached over into the drawer in the dark and felt paper. I read it out loud in our ridiculous little universe, stumbling over my own handwriting, getting to the part about the kite and saying, "You can crash on purpose and that counts as flying." My voice wobbled. She put her hand on my chest and counted my breaths like they were stars. We fell asleep like that, under our pretend sky, the dots on my body lined up with the holes in the lampshade, the world outside the window doing whatever it does when we're not watching. In the morning, the dragon kite was still in the back seat, wings crumpled like a sleeping dog. The ramp held. The pain held, then didn't, then did. The phone sat face down on the table like it didn't know what it was capable of. I drank coffee that tasted like something I'd miss if I let myself, and my wife set a glass of water in front of me the way she sets every good thing in front of me, like it's a secret we can keep if we hold on tight enough. We are surviving Friday. We are waiting on a ghost line. We are not alone in the room, not now, not ever.